don't think I'm the one that needs to tell you that these extreme weather conditions that are being experienced in some parts of South Africa have brought discomfort to thousands of people, particularly those living in the low-lying areas in informal settlements. The South African Weather Service has warned that minimum temperatures are expected to drop significantly over the central, western and southern interior of the country from today. Listen to this, some minimum temperatures in the order of -4 to even -8 are possible over the northern interior of the eastern, the southern and the eastern northern Cape, and also parts of the Free State. So to talk a little bit more about the weather conditions, we are joined from our Pretoria studios by Puseletso Mofokeng. He's the senior forecaster with the South African Weather Service. Puseletso, thank you. Thanks very much for being with us here on the program.
Thank you, Leon, and good morning to the viewers.
So let's sort of start off by having a look at how does the Weather Service actually categorize severe weather warnings?
Well, we would, in terms of the current conditions that we are experiencing, we would know that in winter temperatures easily fall below freezing point. And this is because when we have dry air and clear conditions, it's easy for temperatures overnight to actually drop all the way down. But because currently we have temperatures in the region of -5 and -10, that is quite significant, like you pointed out earlier, and that will be severe, by the way. And the impact of it, of course, like we had seen people already starting fires, it's actually bad. What actually happens when there is cold conditions, would normally have pressure in terms of using electricity. But beyond those who are able to use electricity, it is also difficult for those who are staying in the streets and those who are actually living in the informal settlements. It's very difficult. I think I've even heard in this morning that a number of shacks had actually burnt down.
Yeah.
So according to the statistics of South Africa, Statistics SA basically, they are pointing out that cold conditions are the number 2 killer in South Africa. In other words, when conditions are like this, either people die because of cold or because of burning.
Yeah.
So this is actually quite serious. It's actually severe, yes.
Yeah, it is. It really is it's a serious issue. And we can, gosh, being very, very spoiled, put on an extra layer of clothing, switch our heater on. But there are many people that are unable to do this, and these are the people that are at most extreme risk of losing their lives. And as you say, I mean, already this morning I see a report coming through that somebody has died in a shack fire, and this is not just one. There have been a few, and also the story that our reporter in Cape Town covering, that 3 people are still missing after the severe flooding that hit the Cape as well. So I imagine these are how you go about categorizing these particular dangers that you send out to us. I mean, they're not just, beware, it's cold, so put on an extra jersey. This is serious warnings that you are sending as the Weather Service.
It is so serious. We actually started issuing out messages 2 weeks ago already,
yeah,
pointing out that the beginning of July is going to be very cold. And I'm quite happy that I'd seen that the SABC had been carrying out the message throughout the weekend, pointing out at these conditions. But I think the cold conditions will actually stay with us to the end of the week, let's say to at least about Friday, because by tomorrow we are going to have a cut-off flow developing overhead, and this cut-off flow is going to maintain these cold conditions, especially the daytime temperatures, including the morning temperatures as well. But the relief, a slight relief will actually be experienced on Friday, when the cut-off flow is actually shifting to the western Botswana and Namibia. And that will actually give us a bit of a relief. However, we are expecting that on Sunday, that system will actually move back towards South Africa. It will still affect the Northern Cape, I must point out. But in terms of the rainfall, it is, according to the models currently, there's a chance of rainfall that could be expected on Sunday. And of course, there's also a likelihood of some strong winds that could be accompanying the system when it is actually dissolving from cutoff flow to the upper system.
Looking at some of the very, very cold areas here in South Africa, we talk about the low-lying areas, especially being at extreme risk. Why is that? Why are the low-lying areas always the ones that we really have to be worried about?
I think the low-lying areas are more prone to flooding. In other words, it's only when there is cold conditions, when there is actually heavy rain and flooding, that's when we are talking about mostly about the low-lying areas. But because now we are in the cold spell, so we can actually expect much of the country to be cold, most people to be affected. Like I pointed out, those who are living in the informal settlement, including those who are in the streets, they are actually mostly affected. But I must point out that there is no, except for what happened in the Cape, the rainfall has cleared out today. So except for that, except for the people who are living in the Cape, those are actually affected because of the flooding. But moving to today, there is no chance of rain for much of the country except along the coast of the Eastern Cape. And this will remain, in other words, the country will remain rainless for much of the week, except that the cold conditions is the central message, and it doesn't really going to choose between the high-lying and the low-lying. So all of us are going to be affected, but mostly those who are living in the informal settlement and in the streets.
Okay, so let's start talking about some of the coldest areas in South Africa. I mean, we were estimating that there's some places that are reaching minimum temperatures of between -4 and -8 degrees over the northern interior of the Eastern Cape, the southern and eastern northern Cape, and parts of the Free State as well. Where are we finding the record coldest temperatures?
Indeed, those areas are correct. The Free State is actually affected heavily, and also the Eastern Cape, the Western Cape, in other words, areas like Worcester and such, including the Northern Cape. Those are the areas that are actually affected most in terms of the morning temperatures. However, I must point out that this system, although it produced very cold conditions or bitterly cold conditions, this is not the one of the severest system. In 1996, we actually had the most severest system that actually affected the country, where temperatures were below freezing point. Even I'm talking about the maximum. The maximum were even below below freezing point. In other words, areas around Lesotho like Shelburne, Matatiele. You talk about Buckley East. For Fixback, those were very, very cold. Fixback actually reached about 2 degrees, and this was on the 7th of July 1996.
Yeah.
So yes, we have the cold conditions currently, but this is not one of the most severest systems.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm taking a look at the weather currently at Sutherland, and I mean we're off to Sutherland to do a broadcast from there, and the temperature currently in Sutherland this morning in the Northern Cape is -7 degrees. I'm absolutely petrified to even put my baby toe near there. But I mean, these are some of the temperatures that we experience here in South Africa, and it's freezing. However, besides these traditionally cold places, how are we faring when it comes to this winter here in South Africa? I mean, the trends in South Africa, are we noticing that this year has been a little warmer than last year? Is it very much so the same as last year? What are we picking up? I mean, obviously, you monitor these things, so it'll be interesting to hear from you so far. How have we experienced winter generally in South Africa?
Like I pointed out, although we have very cold conditions currently, it is not one of the worst. We actually experienced the severest cold conditions even in 2012. If you remember, 2012 August, we actually had a snowfall here in Pretoria. So normally, I would say 2015 had been the warm winter.
Yeah.
2005 had also been the warm winter, including last year. I mean, 2015 and 2016, those were the warm winters. However, there were those extreme cold spells like currently. But in general, this year, this winter was not as much cold, except that in this period we are experiencing bitterly cold conditions. However, I do think that by coming to the next week, we are going to have a better weather. In other words, the temperatures are going to move beyond 20 degrees, and therefore we're going to get back to the normal conditions. But even though we'll get to back to the normal conditions next week, we must remember that there are young crops that are affected by the current situation, and therefore the impact of these systems, of this current system, are going to be felt later in the following months. In other words, there's going to be a lower crop production, or rather lower harvest, because of the current conditions. In other words, if you have these cold conditions, they're actually affecting the young crops, and therefore during the harvest time, we're going to harvest less, and the problem then will be that the food price can actually be affected.
Yeah. All right, just a final question as I clear my throat for those selfish Joburgers who are talking about rumours and perhaps, maybe, you never know. Is it going to snow in Joburg?
Well, not this time around. This week, next week, no chance of snowing in Joburg. Like I pointed out, it takes a long time to have snowfall in Joburg. There was one in 1981. There was one in 1996, the day I referred to, on the 6th of July 1996, we had snowfall. We also had snowfall here in Johannesburg and Pretoria in 2012. So this is not a very easy situation to happen. So I don't think this year we're going to have such, but if there is, that is in the next coming months, we will actually point out that situation before it occurs.
Fantastic. Thanks for talking to us. All right, there you go. All those rumour mongers talking about the snow here in Joburg. Well, you heard it from the senior forecaster at the South African Weather Service. Very unlikely. Puseletso Mofokeng telling us, if, however, it does snow, Sakina, they'll be the first to tell us.
Can you actually make a snowman?
I can sing the song.
I don't know if that counts.
You know that song from Frozen? I can do that. But about building a snowman, I don't know about